Most people who start with YouTube have no idea what they're getting into. Yeah, and I know this because I was one of those people. I went all in on YouTube last year, and it was... yeah, pretty wild. Yeah, so in this video I just want to share 5 honest things that actually made a difference in my first year of YouTube. And these are not going to be some magical YouTube tricks to instantly grow your audience, because that doesn't exist. But I will share things that helped me to keep going, to learn faster and not quit when things got confusing, because that is what will make the difference between quitting or succeeding YouTube, whatever succeeding means to you. I'll talk about these things in order because at different moments, different ones matter more, but eventually you will run into all of them. So the first thing I think most people get wrong, and the reason a lot of people quit or never start, is because of this misalignment in their expectations and reality. Because people don't expect it to feel this overwhelming. Probably because there are a lot of people out there selling you the idea that there is this YouTube blueprint, and if you follow this, things are going to be easy. But let me tell you, when I started a year ago, I already had a lot of filmmaking skills. I had been making videos my whole life. I actually owned a video agency for 7 years, but still starting a YouTube channel like this scared the shit out of me. And that's why I actually procrastinated YouTube for almost 5 years. When I finally started, that is when I experienced how overwhelming it actually is. But what surprises me the most when I look back now is not that it felt overwhelming, but that I thought it shouldn't feel overwhelming. Because how did I ever think that it should be kind of smooth? Of course, YouTube is overwhelming. Starting something new is always overwhelming, especially when you care about it, you know? There is so much involved. It's not just filming, but presenting yourself, writing, thinking about ideas, strategy, putting yourself out there and letting people react to it. That is not easy. So if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, it's not a sign that it's not for you, but it's just a sign that you're doing something new, that you're doing something that matters to you. So overwhelm is really a part of the learning process. And if you are waiting for a moment where it suddenly all feels light and easy, well, you're going to be watching a lot of more videos like this, because it's not coming. So instead of asking yourself, how do I stop feeling overwhelmed? The better question is, how do I keep going with this feeling right here? Because that is, I believe, really when you start to grow. But once you accept that overwhelm is part of the process, the next thing that really matters is what you actually do with that energy. And I see this happening with so many people who I had on my one-on-one creative calls. Most people, me included, find it really, really hard to focus on one thing at a time. And I had to learn this really the hard way. Because in my first year, I was working on a big cinematic YouTube video, while also trying to build products, figuring out strategy, writing emails, and trying to make Instagram posts and plan what might come next. And all of that sounds productive and ambitious, but when you're just starting out, it's also completely unnecessary. And for me, it really got me close to burnout more than once. And it made it really hard to feel any progress as well, because when you're working on everything at the same time, nothing really moves forward. So I'm not saying you should only do YouTube and ignore everything else, but you just can't learn everything at the same time. So if you want to do YouTube long term, you're going to have to learn a lot. Storytelling, filmmaking, editing, copywriting, ideas, presenting yourself, maybe marketing and understanding people. So even if you watch all the content in the world about these topics, you still have to go through trial and error yourself. And that is exactly why focus matters so much. Because when you focus on one thing at a time, you will learn faster. And you see what's actually improving, and you can take what you learn into your next video. So if your main goal right now is YouTube, focus on improving your YouTube videos, not also the shorts or 5 other platforms. Because when you improve one thing at a time, progress becomes visible, and seeing progress is what helps you to stay motivated. And motivation really matters because we all know YouTube isn't a sprint, but it's a marathon. And believe me, it really sucks if you try to sprint a marathon. So even if you focus on one thing and think, okay, I'm totally going for this, I think there's still this problem you can run into, and that is starting a video without being really clear about what the idea is. And it makes sense because when an idea feels exciting, the natural urge is to dive straight in. The problem is, without a clear idea to return to, it is very easy to drift. And if you've watched any videos about YouTube strategy, you've probably heard people talk about titles, thumbnails, and packaging. And that advice exists for a reason, but not just because thumbnails and titles matter. Yes, of course they do, but another more underlying reason is this: they force you to think about the core idea of the video. And I've done this both ways last year, sometimes I tried to perfect the title and the thumbnail before writing the scripts, and other times I just figured them out at the very end. But the truth is, I think that both can work. What actually matters more is that at some point, before you start making the video, you have to get really clear on what this video is about and what you're trying to say. What I learned this year is that it's so worth it to spend a little or a lot of time actually to get really clear on the idea of the video. And that can be incredibly simple. Who is this video for? And what is the one thing I want them to feel, to think, or to take away? That's it, If you can answer those two questions, you have something to come back to when your script starts drifting, or when you're in the editing process and things get messy, or even when you start doubting yourself in the whole process. And the interesting thing is that once your idea is clear, a title and a thumbnail can come later as well, because they become easier and not harder. So if you're working on a video right now and you feel lost halfway through, or you keep starting new videos without finishing them, this is really the moment for you to pause and to ask, who is this video for, and what is the one thing that I want them to walk away with? Having a clear idea is what makes finishing possible, and finishing is pretty damn important because that's going to teach you so much more about your direction, about what you're doing well and what not. So having a clear idea is a good direction, but this is also the moment where most people think they need more technical skills and they're going to watch all these tutorials. But what actually helps most is learning how to tell a story. Because the moment you know what story you want to tell, practice suddenly makes sense. Because you're no longer just randomly practicing filming, but you're practicing how to film this story. And you're not just editing, but you're editing to make a message clearer, or you're talking to the camera to explain something in the best way with storytelling. So yeah, story really gives your practice direction, because without a story, you're just doing random repetition. That's why I think a lot of people feel like they're working hard on YouTube, but not getting better. But when you focus on storytelling, every video becomes focused practice, because you learn what to include, what to leave out, where things get boring, when people stay with you, or when they tune out. And I think this is also how you discover your own voice, by writing script and creating scenes, and when you're saying things out loud on the camera and you're watching it back and you're noticing if it sounds like yourself or not, and if things make sense in the edit. That is why storytelling is so important early on, because it turns every video into a lesson. Of course, this is also what I'm trying to do with my Story Starter Kit, because it gives you a project and it takes you step by step through this process and focuses more on the story. So it's a great way to get started. If that's something you're interested in, be sure to check out the link in the description. But of course, you can also do it with your own project. But this is just something that can really help you, especially if you're stuck. Now, let's go to that last point, because I think that one is really important. And the previous points I talked about don't really matter if this point is in your way. There is one thing that always shows up, and that is fear. It always shows up for everyone, fear of how you look on camera, or how you sound, or whatever you're saying makes any sense to people. And the funny thing is that this doesn't magically disappear once you have more subscribers. I wish it did, but the funny thing is that the kind of fear just changes. So for me, when videos started doing well, there was a new fear, fear of trying different ideas or making different kind of videos or messing things up. But again and again, I noticed the same thing, that the fear was always louder in my head than in reality. People don't notice the things you are afraid they will notice. They won't care how your voice sounds. They don't care you have an accent. They don't think your ideas are stupid. And if they do, they probably won't watch your videos. And maybe you get a bad comment sometimes, but it's never as bad as you think. So what actually makes the difference is not whether you feel fear, but how you end up dealing with it. And this can really, really make the difference between quitting, not starting, or succeeding in the end. And that can be life-changing. A fun fact is that I almost didn't publish my most watched video because I thought it was just too simple, and people would think that I was stupid for sharing something that simple. But that video now has over 600,000 views. So if fear is holding you back, whether from starting or experimenting with what you're doing already now, just know this: it's almost never as bad as you expect it to be. And the only way to find out is by going through it. There is no mindset trick around it, no shortcut. You're not going to overcome fear by thinking, you just have to overcome it by doing. And once you do, you will realize that there was far less to be afraid of than you thought. So if your first year on YouTube feels heavy, confusing, or way harder than expected, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Expect overwhelm to be part of it. Focus on one thing at a time. Get as clear as you can on ideas. Focus on storytelling to give you more direction, and learn to move with fear. And if the next thing you want to work on is telling better stories in your videos, watch this video next, because it's the one with 600,000 views that I talked about, and it explains the storytelling approach that I use myself, and it has also helped a huge amount of other people creating better videos. See you in the next.